All right, you bag of electrons, listen up. I want to tell you a story. It's sort of funny, it's sort of sad. I was known for being good at working with bicycles. I was heavily into bicycle riding, did 100-mile rides on the weekends and in groups. I have all these patches and everything. But anyway, so people in the neighborhood would bring bicycles over to me and get my advice. So the kid at the end of the street, he took his bike totally apart. He painted the frame, or he got a new frame or whatever. So he's wheeling the bike up the street, and I'm outside mowing the lawn or cutting some bushes, and I see him coming, and I notice in the crank and chain is on the wrong side of the bike from a distance. And you know that because when you're sitting on the bike, it dirties up your right leg. And that's if I'm even right at this point. But in other words, you put a safety pin, you pull your dungarees up, or blue jeans, and you put a safety pin on it so you wouldn't get the grease on the pants. So anyway, so the kid's come up the street, and I notice it's on the wrong side. So as he gets to me, I said, oh, you redid your bike. He goes, yeah, I redid my bike, but there's a problem. I said, yeah. I said, you got the crank backwards. See the crank there with the pedals, and that should be on the other side. He's just staring at me. He's like, no. Now he's going to insist on showing me what his problem is. Okay, so he picks the bike up, the back wheel, by picking up the seat. And as he cranks the crank, you hear it ratcheting. I said, yeah, because it's backwards. It should be on the other side. No, you don't understand. Look, when I go backwards, I can move the back wheel. I said, yeah, it's in reverse because you got it on the wrong side. And I pointed to it. I said, I point at the chain ring. I said, this is supposed to be on this side. I said, you can put it on either side, but then the back ratcheting mechanism will be reversed. It won't work right. He's just staring at me with this stupid stare. See, and he starts arguing with me. Now, when you argue with an idiot, who's really an idiot? But I want to tell you that I was so good at bikes. I was so confident. I said, look, take it home, put it next to one of your other bikes, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And he's still talking. I just walked in the house, closed the door. And then the next day, he's like, yeah, I had it on the wrong side. Man, I saw it from 5-6 houses away that it was on the wrong side. It just seemed odd. Something was wrong. So his brother's standing there, the other brain trust. I told him there was a problem with the bicycle. You didn't tell him what the problem was. Hey, but we all know that when he goes to pedal forward, it ratchets. When you go to go backwards, and it should ratchet, it's pedaling the wheel backwards. But it's just so funny. His brother always had a habit of not tightening things up enough. And one day the wheel come off on the car, and the car nosed forward into the pavement, and it ground off the rotor. So I go by. I'm going to get milk at the dairy, and I see him working on the car. I walk across the street, and there's a big section ground off the rotor, and the burrs are still on there, and he's changing the pads. And I said to him, I said, that's not going to do any good. I said, the first time you go forward with that bike, the car, the pad is going to rip up the pads are going to get ripped up by the rotor. See, he was putting the pads on a section of the rotor that hadn't rotated yet. That's how some people actually think. So he's like, yeah. And I said, those burrs on the rotor from dragging on it, you got to get them off because well, anyway, the next day, well, we went a few feet and it ripped the rotor. I go, yeah, it tore it right off. And then not only that, he ruined the caliper. The whole thing had to be redone. But when you argue with an idiot, who's really the idiot? So what I was doing with certain people is I would tell them what's wrong, and then I just keep going. Now, in my neighborhood, I go by this one guy, and he says to me, I have a funny noise in the car. And I look down, and there's a giant bubble out of his tire. I said, like a thump, thump, thump noise? He goes, yeah. I said, look at the bubble coming out of the tire. Oh, you think that would do it? And I'm like, I thought he was playing games, but no, he wasn't. So then his son comes out, and he says, Mr. Kleinbauer thinks that bubble in the tire is making the noise. I had to go. I just had to go. At first, I thought he was pulling my leg, that he wanted to see if I could spot the bubble sticking out of the side of the tire. But the tire through a belt and then you get a bubble. I'm amazed. I'm just totally amazed. But I try to help people, and I still sort of do, but I cut them short now because they have this fantasy on how things work, or there's this delusion. They actually create their own reality up in their head how things actually work. And I'm like, if I don't understand how something works, I go read up on it. And in some cases, if a person's working on it and I never seen it before, I'm right in there because I want to learn. And other people, they want to get done, and they cut corners. My father was famous for cutting corners. I used to say my father could hang a grand piano with 3 thumbtacks. I'm not kidding you, man. He would get done with a job. You didn't dare touch it. He used to have rags wrapped around. He would solder 2 pipes together. He'd wrap a rag around it to take up the moisture that was coming out of the pinhole. And he says it'll take, and it does take up. After a few days, the minerals block the hole. But then I learned how to solder. I knew how to get the pipes ready, tinned, and put them together. I never had any leaks. And I used to think plumbing was real hard, but a lot of it, he would just cut corners on everything. And when I'm doing it, he goes, "You're taking too much time." No, I'm not. I'm going to make up for the time by not having to do it over. And he used to say this saying, where I work, we don't have time to do it right the first time, but we always have time to do it. I'm like, yeah, I believe that. Gee, that's news to me. But there are people that they're on a different planet. And if you're a repairman and you're really into it your whole life, you realize when you screwed up. And this radio, when that gear broke, when I found that broken gear, and then I found all that super glue on it, the guy was dropping drops of super glue down onto the gear and then squirting grease down onto it. I don't know what was going through his mind, but I got that working, and now I'm going through all the other things. Every trimmer cap on this radio has been tightened up. Oh, look at this. Another one's loose. I got to tighten this up. And I go read the groups whenever I have a problem. And I have yet to find a solution in the groups. What you will find in the groups is somebody will reference a good schematic or sometimes a website that explains the problem or the solution. That's what I look for. When these people start saying, clean pins 2 and 3. Yeah, you got to get the deox out. Oh, let's spray it with deox. And then you got the other guy. I had smoke come up from the radio. And then one guy tells him, inside the transformers, you take the covers off the transformers, there's capacitors in there. Not always. Not always. And then the other guy's saying, on that kind of radio, people have sprayed it with deox. See, now it's the other guy telling you what happens after you spray deox. The deox gets into the phenolic. It's actually a type of Bakelite. And the wafer switches, they soak them. And then there's an acid in it. It turns all the contacts black. And then it also gets in the phenolic and makes it conductive. Well, they turn the radio on while the deox is still wet. And it allows the electrons to flow through. And the electrons take plating from the contacts and go through the phenolic. And you electroplate your phenolic. And then what happens is now current can flow through the phenolic or Bakelite, and then it goes on fire, and now you're screwed. And I've seen videos where the guy cut sections of the phenolic out, or the band switch, and he actually used epoxy in that area. I won't say JB weld, but an actual epoxy, and he got the radio working. And I give those people credits. They stay with it. They know what somebody did to the thing. But this radio here, right now I'm waiting for the station to get a little bit stronger. 1600 in the middle of the day, this radio can get it on band 1. Right now it can get it on band 2. That's that other thing I discovered, that band 1 on a shortwave radio, it's not as sensitive up at the top. So if you go to the next band that overlaps, you can get the station strong. And that was like a big breakthrough. And that turned out to be the Q of the coils. You're at the top end of the coil. You're pushing it. and the coil's not going to have enough Q. It's not going to give you enough signal. Now, Halcrafters uses a much smaller coil than like a national, and that gives you less signal. That's why a lot of the national radios are hotter because they got bigger coils, more Q, more signal, better better selectivity without doing anything extra to the radio. All right, you nubs, that's it.